What do you think has informed this detailed manifesto as compared to 2017 and 2013?
It's a case of, and I know UDA will be releasing their manifesto, I'm not sure whether it's tomorrow. It's a whole issue of looking for how you can seduce the masses to follow you. Mm-hmm. What are the key things that concerns the people? Mm-hmm. You create a narrative around it to explain what you're going to do about it so that they can come. At the end of the day, these are issues that concern all of us. Education and enrollment. We keep talking about schools should be free and all students should be enrolled. And I believe very firmly that that must be the way to do it. Number two, the cost of living is going through the roof. So somebody must talk about it and say that in 100 years, I'll be able to contain it. And I am expecting that there will be a clause like that in the UDA manifesto, by the way. Mm-hmm. For the 6,000 shillings, there will be a clause that talks about helping the mamamboga, which is exactly the same process. Mm-hmm. In terms of health care, I'm expecting that they will also have something to do with universal health care. Remember, the Jubilee Manifesto had talked about universal health care in 2017. Has it happened? No. Have they studied why it did not happen? I suspect not, based on what I've read today. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, now Odinga talked about reducing the cost of living, as you mentioned, and he said we'll pay special attention to fuel prices in the country that have skyrocketed in the last few months. Analysts say reducing petroleum taxes would mostly benefit urban travelers. How true is this statement?
It's not necessarily true, because the cost of fuel affects everything in this country, mm-hmm. including the manufacturing of goods. So which means even when you don't drive a car, you get affected by lower prices. Because everybody uses a matatu to go to work or a bus to go to work. So if a lower prices is there, then obviously, two things disturb me on that, because the price increase in the recent past has nothing to do with higher taxes. Mm-hmm. To accept that our taxes are very high, mm-hmm. because at any one moment it has always been about 50 to 60% of what you pay at the pump is taxes. But the increase now have been because of the global effect that have caused the prices to go up. Mm-hmm. What is happening in the world? The prices are still going up because especially the war between Russia and Ukraine and the net effect that it has, which means that there's a possibility that this factor will keep going up. Mm-hmm. But it's a good idea if someone would sit back and think of reducing the tax component of fuel. But just remember today, we're still having about 20 shillings subsidy paid by the government on the fuel that you buy at the pump. And I've seen an article today that's saying that in the next 6 months, they have passed a bill that stops that subsidy. Mm-hmm. So come September, October, mm-hmm. the 20 shillings will be added up, plus what effect it will have up to then. Mm-hmm. I just hope that his team, his economic, really thought about how do you handle the fact that that subsidy will be removed unless you create a new law to put it back. Mm-hmm. And number two, how do you deal with the world that is having oil prices going up? And number three, how do you deal with the fact that you need those taxes to be able to run the government that you form?
Mm-hmm. And what should be the priority agenda for anyone that is launching a manifesto in this country? Is it the cost of living? Is it corruption? Youth unemployment? What should be the priority agenda, especially in this 2022? If
you ask my opinion, the biggest priority must be corruption. Because corruption, unadmittedly by government, eats up 40% of the total budget. If you talk about budget of 3.1 trillion, I think now is about 3.1 trillion shillings, 40% means you're talking about almost 2.7 trillion mm-hmm. shillings. To an extent, if you could stop the hemorrhage of the 2.7 trillion shillings, this country will become a middle-income country, by all means. Mm-hmm. Because then it means a lot of that money could go to services that we are not getting, free education, up to university, mm-hmm. free medical health with a little payments here and there, building up of hospitals, building up of whatever. So it will mean that this country will move forward. So if you ask me, that would be the key thing. I saw in that manifesto, his deputy, Martha Karua, was saying that they'll use the 800 billion shillings that will be obtained from corruption, by stopping corruption. I'm worried about that because he himself, Odinga, has been part of the government the last 4 years. If the government, 800 billion shillings are being stolen every year in the last 4 years was part of that government, what motivation does it? Because he didn't see it. Otherwise, he would have jumped out of that government and collect that money so that he can be able to use it. So I see that just as a rhetoric to be able to woo us. And I know a lot of people not agree with me because we don't like looking at the facts as they are. We like to look at which side of political side we support.
Okay, as we wound down the interview, my director is telling me that our time is almost running out. Let's talk briefly about the Mitumba issue that has become so sensational and sentimental in equal measure. What is it about this Mitumba thing that Raila Odinga should know about?
One thing that is a fact is that it ain't good for anyone to wear hand-me-down clothes. But people who wear hand-me-down clothes, they don't wear those clothes because they want to. They do that because of the economic situation they find themselves.
Yeah.
For us to be able to turn around that wheel, we must remember where it came from. By 1990 in this country, we didn't have these Mitumba. Then SAP came and the textile industry collapsed in this country. Because by 1986, by the way, for information, I'm a textile engineer, so when I talk from a position of knowing, having worked in the cotton industry, the textile industry, and the garment industry over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So the industry collapsed. When then of course the growing of cotton also collapsed. The building up cotton, then the textile industry, then the garment industry is a 10, 20-year project. To an extent that the people who ban it today, they will have nothing to wear. We'll go back to 1990, where people used, I don't know whether you have people on their clothes. I can tell you for sure, Tony, today that it isn't a story. People used to wear a big patch at the back because they could not afford to buy anything new. A fantastic idea, but you must look at the period of time that is required to build up so that it can be effective. Fantastic idea. No one should wear hand-me-down clothes, but the people who are wearing them, the people who are buying Mitumba used clothes, are not buying because they want to buy, they're buying because of the economic situation. That you can buy a shirt for 100 shillings vis-a-vis buying a shirt for 1,200 shillings in the shop. You can buy a trouser for 200 shillings Mitumba as opposed to buying a trouser in the shop for 2,000 shillings. To bring that price to 1,000 shillings, to 200 shillings, it's a very difficult job. It takes long, it takes time. So I appreciate the push by the Azimio group that, look, would want to develop industry, would like to build up industry so that this industry can help us to be able to deal with this issue. But please don't talk about Mitumba now. Talk about Mitumba when you have already sorted out the industry.
So you're saying that this Mitumba agenda for Raila is a pipeline dream?
It's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. And these are some of the things that I tell everyone, watch this space 5 years from now. Let's talk about it. People forget very quickly. Let's talk about it 5 years from now. And remember, my opinion is there's still an opportunity for us to be able to build an industry that feeds us. Last year, India exported about $44 billion worth of garments last year. The industry that is doing that was established in the 80s. The so-called the small-scale hand weaving, whatever. Now they have mechanized them. In the 1980s, they have built up slowly, so that by the 2000, they were selling a lot of banyans, the vest, men vest.
Yeah.
But now they're selling shirts, they're selling everything else, $44 billion, as opposed to 1 billion shillings for Kenya.
Okay, I'll ask the last question, or maybe a second last question, about the 100 days that people talk about. We've had presidents give a list of achievements to be accomplished within this time frame. How practical is this thing? That 100 days in office, I will have done this and this.
If you are reasonable, it's practical because it just shows the direction you're going, that you're putting policies in place that lead you towards a certain direction. But when I look at the 100 days and look at, and I'm saying that I should come back when the UDA have done their also manifesto so that you can have a look at it.
Yeah.
When you look at the issues that you're saying you can accomplish in 100 days, you need 5 years to do that. So 100 days is a good thing because you're saying In 100 days, I've started to establish myself as a leader that will cause changes that are necessary. Singapore moved from Kenya level in 1965, and by 1980, that's when they started seeing the effect of the things that they did in 1965. Because for them, they did things totally different. They said, look, we're changing everything. You're going to be the best in shipping, we're going to be the best in airline, an island country. So started educating people, started doing everything that was possible. The effects started trickling in 1971, and by 1980, the world had started noticing what they're doing. In 5 years, please, leader is someone who plants a tree so that his children can come and enjoy the shade. A politician is the man who imagines that he can plant a tree and he sits under the shadow. Yeah. Not possible.
Okay. Now, because we're also speaking to churches, and this is a Christian organization. Now, do you feel like churches or religious organizations maybe should be involved or can be involved in the manifestos formation processes?
My opinion is very different. When I was walking up, I happened to read the vision and the mission of this ministry.
Yes.
To make disciples of men. To preach the gospel to the whole world and make disciples. That's the only purpose. Anything else is extra.
Thank you so much. That has been Alex Mwathi that has been speaking to us about manifestos in the country and just understanding the mystery around the manifestos and holding leaders accountable, especially at this time that the country is moving into the 2022 general election. Thank you so much for making time for us here in the studio tonight.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Okay.